turning up today. We've invited you, this group particularly, because you're people that we've worked with in various ways in the past, and various people have been sharing an interest in this particular project that is funded by the GRDC. And so we thought it would be timely to just provide a bit of an information session on this. So I'm going to be handing over shortly to Adam, our project leader. I'd just like to first acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands in which we're meeting today, pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. And speaking today from the Bundjalung country of the Bundjalung Nation. So we're going to be just giving a bit of an overview today on this project. So the GRDC has supported us as a transdisciplinary team for engaging growers from across Australia. And I can see we've got a really good mix of people here from across the nation. So thank you again so much for coming. So our team's role is to ensure that we have objective scientific rigor applied to better understanding regenerative agricultural systems across Australia and understanding how it's perceived and understood by farmers across the nation. I'm a social researcher at Southern Cross University, and I've met many of you through my work running social benchmarking studies and whatnot. But I'd like to now hand over to our project leader, Dr. Adam Canning, to introduce more about the project and the team.
All right, thanks for that, Hanabeth, and thanks also everybody for joining today. So what I'll do is I will go over, I'll give you a bit of an overview of the project, and then I'll introduce you to the team, the key people that'll be working on it from Southern Cross Uni, and then I'll hand over to a few of my colleagues within the team to sort of talk about some of their bit that we're doing. Okay. So GRDC has come to Southern Cross University and asked us or assigned us with a task. And that task is to essentially, by June 2027, to establish some sort of toolkit or toolbox that growers with regenerative goals can dig into the toolbox, and they can find indicators to help them with monitoring success of their system towards their regenerative goals. Now, those regenerative goals could be agronomic focused. They could be around ecological or soil health, as we often hear. They could be around water improvement. They could be in terms of social goals and socio-ecological systems in their local communities. And they could also be economic goals. So our aim is to collate a range of indicators that could be applied across regenerative systems that are primarily growing grain or otherwise have a grain production aspect of them, so they can be mixed farming systems with grain in there as well, and trial these indicators across the country. We need to get between 60 to 75 growers across all the agroecological zones that GRDC have got. So that's primarily north, south, and west. And then within those, there's some sub-regions that we will that we can also use as well to make sure that we can get a good diversity of growers with different systems. Now, what we want to be able to do is trial out the indicators and get feedback from growers in terms of how do they find using the indicators? What ones do they find useful? What ones don't they find useful? How do they find the practical implementation of them? And also, how responsive are those indicators in terms of the drivers that might be happening? So if a grower does some sort of practice change, are those practice changes observed in terms of a change in that indicator as well? So it's trialing the indicators, getting feedback on them, and also collecting information on the various factors that might be influencing the direction of those indicators as well. So that by the end of it, growers, if they've, whatever their goals are, whatever their regenerative goals, they could go into the toolbox and they could select the range of indicators that might be relevant for their values and their goals for their system. And they could see from the trials where they have worked well, where they haven't worked well, and gauge the suitability of those indicators for their farming system. And also because regenerative agriculture does have, as many different viewpoints on what regen is and what it isn't, do you gauge it with practices or do you gauge it with goals? We've also got a component of the study there too, where we're trying to understand from the growers, well, what does regen mean for them? So that we can see the alignment between what it means for them versus the types of indicators that might be suitable for them long term as well, so that when we suggest indicators or trial indicators, we can make sure that they're relevant for the growers that are for what it is that growers are actually hoping to achieve and wanting to measure in terms of their success. Now, for those indicators, I'll hand it over to my colleague Jackie in a minute to introduce the process that she's been going through in terms of those indicators. But for now, I just want to initially introduce you to the rest of the team. So who are the people that are going to be working behind the project from Southern Cross Uni? And in addition to those at Southern Cross Uni, we will also be looking at having sort of local partner organisations as well that will be helping out. But in terms of the SCU team, this is who we've got. So myself, Adam Canning, I'll be leading the project. My background is in ecology. I'm very much interested in agroecology and how farming systems can be amended or designed, primarily with the goal of improving waterway outcomes. That's primarily where I've focused my efforts on, but certainly ecology, agroecology is kind of my area of interest. We've just had Hanabeth Luke introduce herself before, so she'll be leading the social research side of it in terms of the surveys. And as she mentioned before, she's done a lot of social benchmarking surveys, and many of you would have worked with her in the past. And I will hand over to Associate Professor Jackie Williams to introduce herself. So she's an expert in on-farm natural capital assessments. Jackie.
Hi, everyone. I just want to let you know there might be a big truck go past my place in a minute because there's a bridge building going on my rural road. So timing. So hi, everyone. Just a quick bit about my background. I have social science and environmental science qualifications, but my background's been in land care and NRM prior to coming into academia. So I'm fairly new at Southern Cross Uni. I got involved with Southern Cross last year. I was teaching into one of Hanabeth's units on supporting change in regen systems. And I guess my background is very much in sustainable agriculture, how to demonstrate legally and scientifically, I guess, from the sustainability perspective. So I was with the Ag Law Centre at UNE for quite a number of years. So I'll hand over to Mick now, will I, Adam?
Yep, Mick, g'day.
Thanks, Jackie. Thanks, Adam. Hi, everyone. I think I've met quite a few of you before, so hello to everyone I know and to all those I don't know. I'm an associate professor with Southern Cross Uni, but also working this year part-time with New South Wales Department of Primary Industry on some other projects around soil health. My background's kind of in environmental and agricultural chemistry, so pesticide chemistry, plant nutrition, soil chemistry, but also have a strong interest in soil biology and in particular microbiology, and how the biology influences those chemical and biochemical processes. So yeah, there's a lot to talk about in terms of soil indicators and soil health. Yeah, it's a very complex area of research, but I think this project will give us a good opportunity to kind of take it forward in a practical way. So yeah, looking forward to getting into it with you all and getting some good feedback from what growers are after on the ground. So I'll hand over to Matt.
G'day, everybody. It's nice to see a bunch of familiar faces. I have worked with Hanabeth for probably the last 4 years on the Soil CRC social benchmarking survey, which, yeah, that's where I've met a lot of these friendly faces. I've also developed and co-run a regenerative agricultural mentoring project through the Environmental Trust and Innovation Hub that we run across Southern Queensland and New South Wales. And I've also just finished my PhD exploring the social drivers of a transition to regenerative agriculture. So yeah, I'll be predominantly working with Hanabeth on the survey side of this project. And I'm not quite sure if Jacob is currently with us, Adam.
I think Jacob's still at some leadership training. So I don't know if some of you are familiar with Jacob Birch's work, but he's just working with us. He's just starting his PhD and working with us as research assistant, keeping us linked in with the Australian native grains industry. And we've also got 2 students on the team as well. I'm not going to put them on the spot just yet. I'll wait till later for that. But I'd also like to introduce, we have Brenna Fletcher and also Jen Ringbauer, who are here today, who are doing, Brenna's doing a PhD on this project and Jen Ringbauer's doing her honours in this project. So they're all just getting started. So it's really exciting. So
All
I'll
right.
Yep. Do you want me to jump in?
Yep. Your turn, Hanabeth.
Thanks. Yeah, so look, just there's a few different components of the project. And some of these we are initiating the project with a social survey to really get a sense of several different things. And one is, as Adam sort of mentioned, it's about how regenerative agriculture is perceived, understood, and being implemented by different growers across Australia. And we're aiming to send out a survey across the nation really soon. We're just waiting on our final ethics approval. And that's a survey we're actually looking for about 550 farmers to complete from across some grain growing industries across Australia. One thing we're really hoping that you guys might be able to do is help us to spread the word on that survey when we do send out the media release, hopefully next week. So we really want to understand, what are perceptions of regenerative agriculture? What are those goals that farmers are working towards, whether they see themselves as regenerative, sustainable, or something else? There are a lot of different farmers who are implementing a suite of different alternative agricultural practices. So we're interested in anyone who's just trialing different things. And terminology can be really important to some people. So we're just trying to get a sense of the term, who considers themselves regenerative farmers, who doesn't, and how also that relates to practice, which Matt started doing quite a bit of looking at in his PhD. We've got a couple of papers on that now. But a really important part and aspect of this survey is to identify farmers to participate in the broader monitoring project. So that's really, really important. And as Adam said, we want to get we've developed a matrix as a team, and we're working with the GRDC to select growers. So we're hoping we get 550, 1,000 farmers fill in the survey, and then we can go through and we have a 100 or more or 200 that say, yep, we want to be a part of the broader biophysical monitoring project. So we'll be using this matrix, which will mean looking at particular, we can't look at every single system and region in the country. So how do we determine which sort of areas will be running the more biophysical assessments in? Because there will need to be a level of clustering, just for simple practical reasons, and being able to go out and support farmers and provide them with the monitoring assistance that's needed for the project. So that's a really key element of the survey. And some people have been providing us with lists and people that might be interested, and people have been contacting us directly. And what we're going to do is to send out the survey to all of those people who have expressed interest, and anyone else who wants to send it through their networks is welcome to do so. And once we've recruited those 75 growers, we'll be undertaking a baseline assessment as soon as possible. We're working pretty quickly. And the indicators, Jackie's going to really talk to that in a minute. The indicators will be based on farmer goals, but also on some of the existing markets. And we're really interested in how this project can be as useful as possible for grain growers across Australia right now. So there'll be a baseline assessment initially, and that will have a social component, and we'll be out there monitoring soils, biodiversity, and other elements that will come up. And there will be ongoing grower catch-ups as well. There'll be some on Zoom. Some of you that I've worked with in other projects, such as the knowledge sharing project, we had these regular catch-ups. And we found them to be really effective for, in that case, it was about saying, well, we're trying these different extension and engagement approaches. This really worked. This didn't work. How's it going for you? And just a bit of a check-in for people that are trying and trialing different approaches, to check in with each other and learn from each other as the project goes on. So that's really a big purpose of that, but also there'll be some workshops and a bit more data collection through that as we continue to monitor changes in those landscapes, hopefully, or no change in that time. And then there will be follow-up measurements. So the project goes on for 3 growing seasons, and there will also be social elements, and there will be continued use of those indicators. We're not saying determining exactly the frequency yet, because it will depend on the nature of the indicators that will be used, and some may be used more frequently, and some will be stretched over a longer period of time. Some things might be annual, so we'll continue to keep everyone updated as this all becomes more clear. So I will now hand over to Jackie, because she's been doing a very comprehensive review of all the indicator systems as well. We're so keen to not reinvent any wheels and to make life easier for farmers, not harder. We don't want to create something new, but Jackie will speak to that. So I'll hand over to you, Jackie.
Thanks, Hanabeth. Yeah, so I just wanted to, I guess I didn't want to overwhelm everyone with all of the indicators that exist. We're just trying to look at what, I guess, the themes that we need to consider. And I guess there's a lot of drivers at the moment, in particular natural capital and ESG and sustainability requirements that's coming in through the new legislation, and also some of the value chains. So what I'm unpacking at the moment, and I have come up with a comprehensive set of indicators, but we're going to be looking at those in more detail just over the next month, is farm scale natural capital. So how would you describe and assess on-farm natural assets? So from looking at the literature and different definitions of regenerative, is that there's ecosystem services or ecosystem health included in that. So would farmers be interested in benchmarking their natural capital at a point in time and determining the condition of that natural capital? And then that would help underpin some of the ecosystem services that you could identify from there. So, and what I'm looking at is, as Hanabeth says, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. There's already agreed standards and metrics and indicators of how we measure the natural assets in Australia. I've looked across all the different states and territories to have a look at how we might harmonise that, because we do have agreed standards at the national level. So that's, and also some of the rapid appraisal systems that are recognised by state and territory and national level as well. And I guess the main reason I'm trying to align with those metrics is so that we have some validation and verification that we used a method that's recognised by the government or recognised by science, if you like. Because, you know, we're talking about farmer-led or farmer-undertaken data. So, you know, once you have that benchmark assessment of your natural capital, you can identify what ecosystem services are being delivered from the farm scale. Now, the farm scale, socioeconomic and agronomic, I'll leave it to Mick to have more detail about agronomic, but I'm looking at aligning with ABARES and ABS survey indicators or metrics so that we can do some comparison. Say, for example, we want to show regenerative agriculture, regenerative farmers, you know, if we want to do a comparison, we need to have consistent metrics so we can do that down the track, as well as at this scale, farmer well-being, and there's some good data on regenerative agriculture and well-being as well. So we're just looking at what's out there, what's consistent that we can adopt or align with. And I'm sure everyone's familiar with the environmental social governance space and sustainability indicators. There's a plethora of frameworks and systems for these. We haven't really got anything concrete, though I have identified already in some of the Australian grains industry. I think it's the Oilseed, Australian Oilseed Federation. They run a certification scheme under the international, I think it's the ISCC, which is entry into the European market, that the growers have to demonstrate that their biodiversity and carbon certification as well. So what I'm trying to look at is what would be an achievable and relevant set of ESG indicators and sustainability indicators at the farm scale as well. So I guess I've sort of covered everything. I haven't gone into the agronomic because that's, again, what's relevant and what's achievable, I guess, at the farm scale. But I'm keen to hear what your thoughts are about what indicators are required. I should say I'm a small organically certified farm as well, and I work with the organic industry. And I've been saying for some time the organic industry needs to modernise because it's not prepared for this ESG sustainability space either. And I guess every farmer is facing that challenge in the next year or so. So I think that's enough from me. I'll pass on to Mick, I think, is it?
Yep, we'll go to Mick and then we'll open it up for Q&A after that. Mick?
Thanks, Jackie. Thanks, Adam. Who's driving, Adam? Is it you that's driving?
Yep, I am. So you can let me know when you want to change.
Thanks. Yeah, so I guess as part of this, you know, from previous projects and talking to people interested in regenerative agriculture, soil health is one of the key you know, aspects of regenerative agriculture that growers are interested in, both from the point of view of protecting soil, but also how they can improve, I guess, soil health for agronomic and environmental outcomes. And so, you know, there's been a lot of work done around soil quality, soil fertility in the past, and more recently soil health. And there's, you know, thousands of different ways that we can measure many different aspects of soil health. So, you know, the challenge for us in this project is working out which ones are, as Jackie said, consistent across different frameworks that have already been set up, and also responsive to management practices, you know, in a timely way so that we can monitor change, I guess, you know, over a 2 to 5 year period. Ultimately would be good, I think, for growers to start to get some of that feedback and seeing what they're doing on the ground is actually having an impact, and they can see that change. So we don't want the indicators to be super responsive in that they're bouncing around with every drop of rain or, you know, movement of wind, but we also want them to be responsive enough that we will see change. And I guess they need to be robust in that the ways in which we're measuring these indicators needs to be consistent across different farms, so that we can compare data and growers can compare themselves with, you know, neighbours with regional data, and ultimately things like the National Soil Monitoring Program that's being rolled out through the Federal Department of Agriculture. So those programs will be producing a whole lot of data where, you know, we think as a project, we really need to align what we're going to be doing with those other programs as well to help us interpret the data that we're getting across broader scales and different environments. So, as I said, there's many different ways that we can look at these indicators. So, you know, for starters, we can look back through farm management records, and going forward as well, we can look at things like, just some examples, fertilizer applications. We can look at yield maps, protein maps, and they will help us to infer things about the current condition of the soil and capability of the soil, and particularly spatially across a farm. And we can also look at remotely sensed and model data, so ANSYS, which is the soil federator. A lot of the state government department data, as well as other data, has been pulled together in this ANSYS framework, which everyone can access, and there's a whole lot of data in there that we could use for this project. We can also use remotely sensed data from satellite imagery, looking at things like ground cover. And the benefits for that is, again, it's spatial. We get a lot of good spatially delineated data across the farm scale and across the region. And it's also relatively cheap to do. We can also look at local indicators of, or what's traditionally been called local indicators of soil quality, but we can call them local indicators of soil health, things that growers can do themselves that can actually go out and monitor, with increasing frequency if they want to, and relatively cheaply as well. And we can look at how those are linked through to, I guess, the more technical indicators of soil quality, where growers might actually take a sample or have an agronomist or a consultant come in and take samples that are then sent off to the lab that give that really hard data. So yeah, Adam, if you can just click through again. And there should be one more. Yeah, so bringing together all these different data sources, if we get the data that we're after, and get feedback from growers about what they think are good indicators for their soil health and how that links through to environmental and agronomic properties, we can then direct those as well and help to direct them so that they fit in with a whole lot of other frameworks that have been built previously and are ongoing into the future, so that the data can be, better interpreted in that kind of regional context. And I guess a key challenge for us in this project is limited budget. It's the same with everything: budget, time, money. Soil sampling, how frequently and how intensively we take samples so that we get meaningful data. And I guess that's a real challenge that would be great to get feedback about as well. And I know I saw that Gwen Greelett and Dave Davenport are on here, and I think a few others who have had some experience in this space about how much data we can collect. And, I don't think, classically we might approach this either with, design field experiments where we're testing hypotheses, or paired regen versus non-regen sites, where we might need, hundreds and hundreds of farms to be able to make statistical comparisons. And I don't think that we'll have the ability to do that in this project. But there are ways out there now looking at things like remote sensing combined with machine learning, where we may be able to start making inferences about different practices. So that's something that I think this project will also explore. So I'll leave it there, but yeah, really keen to get feedback as we go along as to how we might do things better and in a practical way that works for growers.
All right. Hanabeth.
All right.
Let's kick us off with Q&A.
Yeah, sure. Look, I think most people have our contact details, but the main thing there is feel free to get in touch. But I'm just going to just say that because we're going to open up for the Q&A now, and we'll maybe take that slide down if you like, Adam. That'd be good. Thank you. And well, yeah, just take the whole slide thing down. Yeah, that's good. Stop sharing. Yeah, then I can see all of you. That's great. Thank you. Yeah, so look, obviously it's a pretty ambitious project. We've got a lot of really sort of exciting things that we're working towards here. I think we've got a really good bit of a dream team to work towards those goals. But, I think we learn more by learning together. I think that's really, really key. And we're already, part of today is reaching out to you guys. And, we definitely don't want to reinvent any wheels, and that's what Jackie's really been trying to do as well, really look at all existing projects that are happening. And I noticed those comments from you, Sudesh, as well. That's a really valuable project we're looking at as well. And also Gwen and David, and the work that you did in this space as well is invaluable. And we want to learn from you and continue these conversations as the project goes on. I'd like to just open the floor up. Just first of all, are there any other projects that we should potentially be linking with? Is one question. I might hold that one off until after this question though, which is what do you guys think as a group who have got some really good experience and insight across the nation? What kind of indicators do you think are going to be of the greatest use in this particular context? Can I just throw